Three, two, one. Hello, welcome to another video log. And today, as we are doing a week on Aperture64's blog, is we're looking at noise. And actually, this is one of the images which I'm using on the blog at the moment. It's an image actually I took in Krakow back way in 2010. It was like 2010, 2011, New Year. You can sort of see that from the date on the posters on in the window. The reason I use this image in the tutorials I've been doing on the vlog about noise reduction is because I needed two images, one which was going to be a highest ISO image and one which is a low ISO image. And so this image is the lower one. It was shot at 200 ISO, and then the other image was of the Krakow wool market, which was shot at 1600 ISO. So really, I needed two images which were shot about the same time. They were shot about maybe even 12 hours apart. One was at night, one was during the day. One thing about HDR images when you're thinking about noise is that HDR images will enhance the noise. And generally it's sort of advised that to shoot a HDR image, you should really shoot on a lower ISO setting, possibly the lowest you can, although that also does go against the thing that you shouldn't really have too low shutter speeds because of things moving too much. So you sort of have to have a balancing act. If you have a good noise reduction workflow or a good noise reduction plugin or program, then maybe you can sort of use your shooting can sort of work around that a little bit more. So obviously this image, I want it as a HDR because as you can see there's all sorts of little details everywhere. This obviously is an older image in Krakow, but you can see the nice detailing there in the door, and obviously in the signing as well, and in the walls you can see where graffiti has been sprayed on and then taken off. So I'm really going to want to try and enhance those details using the three different parts of the make up the HDR of the three exposures. So I'm just trying to find the best settings now just to try and pull out the detail in that, but I don't want it to go a bit too crazy. You sort of see these HDR images sometimes which are like unreal. You know, you look at them and you're like, never in a million years would I have seen an image like that. So HDR, you have to sort of be a little bit careful. Also, people sometimes I feel when they're showing their images, they want to show like the histogram to go with it. And one of the things I say now, after nearly 10 years actually, since I really started photography, is don't look at your histogram. I think there's a lot of things taught in books saying this is the perfect histogram for the perfect exposure. Well, if you look at the histogram now and you look at the image now, I wouldn't say that was the perfect exposure for this image. Yeah, it's a good exposure. It looks fantastic. But you want sometimes quite shadows to give you drama, or you want blown highlights to add something else into the image. Also, color affects your histogram as well, as you can see here. And just like playing around the temperature, looking at how different things are working. And that yellow is the spike from the temperature thing. And you see it just drop down there. It's really one of those things where I wouldn't really bother too much with looking at the histogram. You want to have an image which looks good and balanced and works aesthetically. I think that's the way I would put it. Some people say I want to be the photographer who shows the world what I see. Well, I used to be that guy, but I'm not so anymore. I sort of say I want to be the photographer who can show you great images. Here I'm just sort of looking at it before and after, just checking it. It looks okay. It looks a bit dull before actually. One of the things I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to put a gradient in to this image. And the reason is that the bottom is very bright. I just want to lower that down a bit, just to give it like detail. With that brightness, I had lost this sort of shadow detail, these sort of marks, and I don't know what that could be. There's some watermarks. Krakow is quite a party town, especially at New Year. So it's really finding the way the image work best. And as you can see here, the whole image is shifted just then. But it looks good. So I'm not going to worry too much. This histogram looks a little bit different when it goes into Photoshop, mainly because at the moment it's working at a 32-bit. and when it will go into Photoshop, it will come out as a 16. So you lose about half. So the detail in the histogram will change. I sort of pulled up the curves because automatically I thought about this sort of gap now going in the histogram, and I pulled up the curves automatically just to sort of brighten to bring in the detail. But now I was like, well, why do I have to? You know, it's not really needed, I suppose. So I'm just trying to make the right adjustments here. This is like my negative. This is sort of like working with the enlarger. If I was in the darkroom, or maybe not the enlarger actually, maybe the developing part. Anyway, it doesn't really matter too much. So I'm just double checking all the settings. I really like the image now. At this point, I really like it. This image went through two different phases. This one I really liked. It looked really strong, and it sort of really stood out. Actually, by the end of this video, I don't like the image. I've actually done a little bit extra work with it. So I'm just going to export the image now to Photoshop. The first thing I want to try and do is, I'm not sure, I'll show you. That's what I was going to do. I was going to show you the difference in noise levels. At the beginning of the video, I said that the noise was very different with HDR image and the original image. So the image on the right, it's actually the capture image. Nothing's been done to it. It's straight from Adobe Camera Raw. I haven't even touched it in Adobe Camera Raw. And here you can see actually the massive difference in the noise. And it's really quite striking how much it is. Now, normally when you have three images and you layer them on top of each other, especially a random noise, you can actually reduce the noise. And it's one of the techniques I'm actually going to show on the blog. And you can sort of see that the noise is much stronger, and it's because you have the three different exposures joining layered together and creating contrast. And that's really what HDR does. It uses the different exposures to create added contrast within the midtones of the image. And that's how you get all this sort of detailing, which you don't even normally get. As you can see here, the detail in this the window, it's very smooth, very, very smooth. And the lettering is quite smooth as well. So, and then when you look at the HDR, you can see that it's not smooth at all. It's really, really like noisy, and this is because of this HDR treatment. That in the highlight and then with the shadows and with the normal exposure, there was a contrasted tone in this wood. But you can sort of see in the original exposure, it's a bit dirty. That's what it is. It's the dirt that's picked this up. And the noise has just really, really leveled itself on top. I think let's move on now. Don't want to really save it. There's sort of two ways I work. I work with zooming in at the zooming in on the pixels, and then zooming out onto print size, and then fit into the view. So here what I'm going to do is just clear this. I'm going to do a perspective crop. Perspective crop is a useful tool, especially in the case I have here, because the image is just a little bit out of perspective. That's how I'm going to say it. Maybe I didn't have the camera completely straight when I was taking the picture, or maybe tilting up a little bit, and everything just changes perspective. I'm a real nitpicker when it comes to things like this. I really don't like things out of perspective. It bugs me. It's one of the things I most detest in images. But then again, that is my own preference. Other people don't like it, so I wouldn't say an image is ever a bad image because it's out of perspective. But my own pet hate, or maybe you could say a pet peeve, is I don't like images out of perspective. Although then again, I take images out of perspective. And here's a grand example. So what I'm doing is trying to zoom in, and I'm using the outer of the alcove that the window is set into as a guide for the perspective of the whole image, because this is definitely a square, or I'm going to guess I take to say is a square. So what I'm just doing is coming out. I've lined up one side, and now I'm line up the other side. And once I've lined it up, I can then just expand as I need to. Why am I not using the windows? Well, windows sometimes are not straight. But then again, walls are sometimes not straight as well. You have to be a little bit careful when you're doing this to make sure you are picking something that you know is actually on a 90-degree and what is on a 90-degree angle. And then you can see Sylvester 2010 2011. So that's a new year. Sylvester is the Saint's Day. Saint Sylvester. And I've got my one perspective line there. What I'm doing is I'm zooming in and out using the wheel on the mouse. So when you're using a tool, you usually can't zoom in and out. So I use the Alt and the wheel just to zoom in and then zoom back out again. You can also use spacebar as the hand tool. So I set up the perspective here, and then now I'm just dragging the sides, and the sides will expand out in perspective to what you have set up really on this in this cropping grid. So unfortunately, I'm actually going to miss a little bit of the top of this lamp here. It's a little bit unfortunate. The perspective crop tool is a great tool, and I think it's actually one of the great newer tools which is in Photoshop. I know it's not new, but it's quite a good new tool to have and to know about, especially when you're out and about and you're like, I'm never going to shoot this. I want this in perspective. I'm not going to be able to. And then using a little bit more creative in your camera, leaving a lot of room around the outside of an image, especially a building, means that you are able to get it into perspective, like I have here. So I quite like it. It looks quite nice now. I'm just going to need to do a quick lens adjustment, lens correction. The image. I don't know if you can see it. It's bold. It's sort of bulbing out. I don't know if that's actually the right word for it. It's sort of coming towards you in the center. I don't actually know the word for it. So what I'm going to do is I've now got all this sort of set up. I'm just going to convert it to a smart object. And once it's converted, I will then do my lens correction. Lens correction doesn't actually take too much time. Apparently converting to a smart object does. The great thing about the newer lens correction is that it saves the profile of your camera, and it'll take it from the metadata. So it will automatically set it up and correct what is technically wrong with your camera, which I think is actually quite a quick time saver, because you don't actually have to look around too much. So here's the difference really you're going to see now. And it's just that's what I mean, it's bulging in the center. So, but it looks quite nice now. Maybe I should have done the lens correction first. Maybe. I mean, I could have done all the perspective stuff there, but I prefer doing the perspective crop. So now I need to sort of combat this noise. I'm going to use my normal plugin, which is Noise Ninja. It's quite a powerful plugin actually, and each time you use it, you can actually set the profile of the image. So that can be quite useful for when you're using specific images. Here, if you pull all the strength really up, you get these sort of strange artifacts. So my balance is to reduce the noise, but not create new artifacts or new things in the image. Because in doing so, we're going against the whole point in reducing noise. If you're just going to go and make more trouble for yourself. So I'm just trying to get enough that I'm not washing out the detail, especially in the HDR. There's a lot of detail in a HDR image, and you don't want to like wash it out like here too much, because you create the HDR because you want that sort of contrasted detail. And then the minute you go and use your noise reduction, you completely blow it away. That's not really what we want to do. So I'm just trying to find a good balance in this. It's one of the things that This is all luminance noise. None of it's actually color noise. And it's one of the things. If it was color noise, I would just muck around with the color. But it's luminance, and I really have to just be a little bit careful about how much I'm gonna play with this. Really, so let's have a look, see what it looks like. It looks. I think the contrast is possibly a little bit too low, but you don't really know until you've actually done it. Yeah, and it looks a little bit washed out. It looks a little bit out of focus in the center, and that's what's bugging me a little bit. So I'll just sharpen up the image, and that looks better. Now it doesn't look so sort of dull in the middle. I always check previewing. Okay, just try and work out some curves. I've brightened the image, and I'm not quite too sure why I'm brightening it. Um, it definitely needs some. It needs some added adjustment. I think that's really what it needs. But let's just have a quick zoom in and look at the noise now. So we look at the print size, it looks quite good. You can't really see any real noise. And it wasn't too bad originally actually. And but I always go in at 100% just to have a look and just to check, because sometimes you don't see things, or you don't see things now, but actually later on you will. And it's really just making sure everything is okay in the image and everything is fine in the image. So what I'll do is I'll work on this image a little bit more. I don't really, I like it, but there's something lacking at this moment in time for me personally. So I'll work on this image and I'll post it on the blog with the video. The blog is at is www.aperture64, as was 64 .wordpress.com. You can also find me on Facebook, which is Aperture64, spelled 64, and you can also find me on Twitter, which is at Aperture64. But this time it's just the 6 and the 4. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you will tune in next Tuesday. I always put my video logs on Tuesday. And please pop over to the blog to look at all the posts about reducing noise this week. I'll be posting one a day about different things. On Friday I'll do a roundup about which one I think is the best. Until next week, I'll say goodbye.